Alright, next as we continue on with this series where I'm looking back at old videos and realizing how much I messed up talking about good movies and didn't see them for the greatness that they were, the next one I want to go into is Crawl from 2019, which is a movie that I really should have loved right away, yet for some reason this video is terrible. And for some reason I went after this movie. I don't know if it's just because I wasn't really into it the first time, or what, or if it was another movie that maybe had expectations set too high by some really great reviews. I don't know, but this is one that I particularly botched, so I'm pretty excited to be able to do this and try to fix this. So, honestly, the first thing I want to go into, though, the first thing in this video is something that addresses those good reviews. The good reviews. I was really not expecting this movie to get the reviews that it has. But with that said, these same reviews were doing a lot of positive comparisons to The Shallows with Blake Lively, which is a movie a lot of people love a lot, and I didn't like really at all. Before I get into all the things I said in this video that I don't agree with, I can say that I have rewatched The Shallows recently, and I still don't care about it. I don't... There's something about watching Blake Lively writhe in pain for a straight hour and a half that I just don't find appealing, I guess. And I'm typically for, like, those sort of one-person survival kind of movies. And what's weird about that, though, is that I can understand the comparisons that this got with it. But this one works for me a lot more now, and The Shallows still does absolutely nothing for me. So let's get into the other stuff now that I'm not so proud of saying. We do have blatant foreshadowing, we've got her whole thing. There's she's got a thing on her dashboard that's a shark eating a person. All this stuff, and we know the direction this movie is going. Okay, so the first thing I can ask is, why was I so anti-foreshadowing? I don't really know. That just kind of seems like targeting the movie in some weird way. Because foreshadowing is perfectly fine in most scenarios. There's also the thing about the shark being on the dashboard eating the person. I think, no, I mean, I said that was blatant foreshadowing, but I think I also kept forgetting that this movie did have Raimi's name on it, and it wasn't just like Raimi's an executive producer, he just said, yeah, put my name on it, it'll help you sell it. He seems like, when he takes a producing job too, he's pretty hands-on with it, and I get that sense here also, and there's this sort of tongue-in-cheek nature to that whole shark thing on the dashboard that does have that tongue-in-cheek Raimi-ness to it, and you would think that I would... I mean, obviously, I like to say I get Raimi now, but I had to see Drag Me to Hell a couple of times before that really sunk into me, and it's like, you would think I would really get right away, like, oh, when you go into a movie, even if he didn't direct it, or even if he didn't write it, if Raimi's name is on a movie, expect some sort of tongue-in-cheek nature to it. It just comes with the territory, that's the style, and it's amazing because he knows how to do it like practically nobody else, especially in horror. So, that's... yeah. I don't know why I was so anti-foreshadowing, but it's senseless. To get there, we have endless scenes of her screaming "Dad" while looking for him. And obviously it kind of shows a bit of a desperation the more it goes, but at the same time, it also gets incredibly grating after about the 40th time and like the 5th location, until she finally finds him. It's like, Barry Pepper is one of the great underrated actors out there, and it's like, I have never been more relieved to see him show up, because it would stop her from fucking screaming "Dad" every 5 seconds. Okay. Yeah, she does scream "Dad" a lot in the first few scenes there, but I think I'm definitely blowing it out of proportion here, because it is just until she finds him, which is pretty early on and pretty fast, especially given that the movie is so swift in general. And whenever she does scream it is like when she's at a different part of the house. It's not like she's just standing in one spot and just screaming "Dad" over and over again. She goes like in one room and calls for him, and then goes outside and calls for him, goes down to the basement and separate parts of the basement and calls for him. There's something... she's not just doing it to do it, so it's whatever. And as far as it being like in desperation, like I said there, it actually feels less like desperation and more like frustration after a while, where it's like when you get to that point where you're looking for somebody or you're worried about somebody and you're not getting a response back, and out of fear you can start to get really mad and frustrated. I feel like that's more of what it is, with maybe a little bit of desperation in there, obviously, to find him and everything, but yeah, so yeah, it might be a tad excessive, but it's not that bad. There are some decent ideas here, I suppose, like the idea of adding the looters in and stuff like that, and these different ways where they could potentially have help, but then they also find themselves in like these situations where they're trapped and they have to find their way out of them. Which could be exciting, but at the same time, after a while, this kind of start to get redundant. It kind of seems like he's starting to use the same techniques to get the thrills out of it. Okay, so after this, I kind of went on to basically answer my own criticism, where I talked about... I made it another criticism where I said like he was trying to build up the body count. I guess referring to the director. And I had talked about that it was just, to add to the gore factor, and then I went on to say, but that's what we're here for, to see, alligators eat people. That's the whole appeal. Especially when you come to this guy's movies, who's known for his gore and his kills and stuff like that. But not, on top of that, though, I did talk about the whole making it seem like they had help and then they don't. And it's like, yeah, that's a major driving force to the emotions of the characters, the main characters being Kyle Scodelario and Barry Pepper, and killing their hope sort of constantly is really what's... Not only does it, work for them as characters and drive them harder, but the idea of the audience feeling like we're in a place of, so things will be fine, obviously, and then you just kind of kill that hope immediately. That's going to do something to what the stakes feel like and how it feels helpless, so that when they get out at the end, it feels much more triumphant. And it's in that great moment where once they're out and we see help coming, the real help coming, it just ends. Like, that's how effective it would be to hold off on giving the audience or the characters any hope whatsoever until then. And that works really effectively. And not to mention that these attacks on the looters are done really well. There's the great moment where we see the girl attacked basically in the background for a while, which is really well done, and then the guy that's in the store, where we see it in the reflection of the mirror in the corner. So, yeah, all of that is really well done. So, once again, I just don't know... I don't know. I feel like I'm reaching here with, with these criticisms I had. One of the things that kind of holds this back is how many times our main character is close to death. She takes so many hits that should injure her throughout this movie and beyond. But it just kind of has no particular impact. She's apparently fine. What happens to her happens to another character, and their limbs are just coming off like nothing. She has the power of the script to keep her alive and all of her limbs intact, so good for her. Okay, first of all, I hate the fact that I used plot armor as a criticism, because I fucking hate when people do that. I don't, because obviously the character's going to be in danger, but the character can't die midway through the movie, obviously. Not in a movie like this, anyway. And it's... And this... Yeah, I don't know what... I really hate myself after this one. And talking about her getting attacked and surviving and not losing a limb, I'm assuming I'm talking about the scene where she has the gun and then it bites her arm and then she starts shooting it. And so, yeah, it's not like she just got attacked like the other people in the movie, like the looters, for instance, or were defenseless. By the time it bit her arm, she was shooting its insides, so it makes perfect sense that she would be able to get away from that attack. And not to mention, when I talk about the characters being in no particular danger, I seem to be, unless he was who I was talking about, maybe, I feel like I was talking about the looters there, but Barry Pepper loses an arm, like at the last minute, surprisingly. So, yeah, and like I said, obviously the whole thing is about survival, so of course the character's going to be in constant danger, but without dying. I don't know what the hell I was talking about here. I don't know, but let's try to pretend I never used plot armor as a criticism. Because, like I said, it's the main fucking character. If the character was going to die right away, there would be no movie. At least in a movie like this. So, I don't know what the fuck. And then they kind of take the cheap route by adding a dog into the equation. And so there's always the constant question of, oh my god, is the dog safe or is he not? Which is just a cheap trick in any particular movie like this. Okay, well, first of all, the dog doesn't die, so all is forgiven anyway. But as far as the dog being in, like, danger and them using that as, like, a crutch, that's not really the case, because it's not like they keep teasing that the dog could die. The dog is pretty... I mean, everybody's in danger here, but the dog's not really around the alligators until the climax. And even then, it actually does serve as this really suspenseful scene where the dog has to swim, but it doesn't feel cheap, because it feels like not only have we built up all of our characters, the dog is included in those characters. So when he's actually in danger, and there's this moment where we don't know if it's going to come out or not, an actual genuine suspense is there as the dog swims from here to Barry Pepper, and it's... yeah, so it all serves its purpose. The thing about this movie, though, that I feel like is probably what makes it work for a lot of people, and kind of adds to the tensity of it, is the claustrophobic setting. How we pretty much just have... a lot of the movie is set in Barry Pepper's basement, and them feeling trapped in there. I honestly feel like this is the kind of movie, especially setting up the whole hurricane thing and the floods and all that, this is a movie that really needed to expand its setting. Like, it works as a claustrophobic movie to an extent, but when you've got such a whole grand scale thing going on the outside of stuff, I really wanted to see more stuff out there, and I feel like you could have gotten a lot more of a thrilling movie out of it. Well, the first thing I'll say is one reason that the claustrophobic setting really works, not just because that's kind of the whole horror of the situation, like that's the whole foundation of what the movie's about, is being stuck in a small crawl space with, you know, these dangerous alligators. But the thing about it is, they establish really quickly that there's more than one. I think, at the end of the day, I think there's like 3. And it's not just the idea of being stuck in a small place, but it's what you're stuck in a small place with, is what the horror of this movie is all about. And secondly, as far as having more scenes outside, there would still be limited mobility in a hurricane, I would think. So I feel like we'd kind of be back to square one if a lot of it was set outside, and there wasn't really much. Probably there weren't many places they could go or much they could do with the hurricane holding them back. So I don't know what that was about, but I also like the fact that because there's so much horror in what's going on in the basement, in the crawl space, where there's all the water rising, and there's, you know, Barry Pepper being stuck in one place, there's the fact that there's 3 alligators going on. By the time we get out into the hurricane, which would be the main horror of any other movie, there's like a relief, where it's like, as long as we can see, I mean, the sky may be covered in apocalyptic clouds and bringing rain that could still kill us, but there's like a relief about being outside, even if outside is just as dangerous. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic that the setting has going on. So, no, I really don't think I would change the setting of this movie, because that's changing the movie completely. And in the meantime, it's one of those movies where we get the run-of-the-mill backstories, and her and her dad talk about their issues, and what all went wrong, and all the stuff about her mom and all that. And it's one of those movies where you're like, in one side you're like, oh, this is where we get the character development, this is what happens in, you know, critically acclaimed monster movies, where it's like, oh, I'm surprised by how much focus there is on the emotions of the characters and shit like that. But now is not the time. It's just not the time for that shit. In this scenario, there's never a good time for that. And it feels like the movie just halts to say, hey, will you care about our characters that we're not even remotely going to try to kill? Okay, so this is the kind of thing I usually just say when I'm not into a movie, where it's not really much of a criticism of the movie itself, doing characterization. Because, yeah, this does happen. If I'm not into a movie, the characterization does just feel like a script process and not making characters. But that's not the way I would describe this movie. And the thing about it is, because not only does the characterization here work, but it's especially the bond between the two of them, which is what's building. Yeah, I talk about like run-of-the-mill backstories that come back into play, like the fact that, of course, she's a swimmer, so all of this. And of course, he knows what he's doing as far as like survival instincts and all that. But in combining that, I get what I was trying to say, I think. But like I said, I don't think it applies to this movie because it does feel thought out. It doesn't feel just for the sake of moving a plot forward. There's these moments where he's helping her like stay strong through it, and how it like echoes him coaching her when she was swimming. That's something where it feels right. It feels true. And it feels true to these characters. And then when it comes into this situation, it feels organic. And the fact that when she breaks down and she says like she's mad at him, but she also misses him, where it's like she, she's so frustrated and like tries to is like basically pushing him away, but then she misses him being, you know, at the swim meets and stuff like that. And it's like there's some real power in there and some real emotion in that. And it's something that really makes you feel for the characters that doesn't just feel like a script working. So, like I said, this was just me not giving the characters a chance, unfortunately. And even the side characters, like the sister's ex, where it just seems like, oh, he's another character that's introduced just to die, but I actually feel like they used him quite well as a diversion, because, first of all, you would think he'd be here to serve the plot in the sense that because she knows him, he's going to be the one that lets her back into the hurricane, and then so the movie can start. But he actually actively stops her, and he says, I can't let you do it. He even thinks about it, and then he says, no, I can't do it. It's too dangerous. And he makes her turn around, and it's her, in her own instinct and her own will, that she turns around and defies those orders. And then bringing him back, now that he's already been introduced, and now that the Gators are here, we might be under the impression that he's going to last longer. Like maybe he'll last at least till the climax. So to reintroduce him just to kill him right away is actually a really good diversion in a way that we might not expect that character to go after he's already been introduced. So I like the fact that they built him up twice like he was going to be useful, and both times he's kind of not. So, and that might seem like, oh, it's just a throwaway character, but no, that's also a script kind of working against expectations, so that kind of throws your whole mind into, like, through a loop when you're trying to figure out how this is going to turn out. So he actually does serve a purpose in that way. So, yeah, I really appreciate that character of the Sister's X, even though he's completely useless. It's great. So I think that's pretty much all I said in the video. Thank God. Something I didn't mention, I think it's something that I want to bring up that never got brought up, was the sound is something I should have really complimented. Where obviously there's a lot going on, where you like have a lot of the smaller details of where the sound will be, but there's also the fact that there's this constant water that's going on, whether it be falling through the windows or the way it's rising or whatever. But then you have like the great moments like when the alligator's tail like scrapes against that bar, and it's like when you like run your thumb over a comb or something, only more dreadful in a great way. There's the moments where she's underwater and we can hear Barry Pepper like hitting metal, and just the way that how immersive that is in the underwater moments. There's that moment. There's a couple of moments where the gator's tail like seems to slap water into the camera. That's really great. And details like that really stand out and really make the really claustrophobic setting that seems really limited this really real and scary place. That's great. Also, as far as sound goes, just the crunching also feels very real in a sense, but also done just enough to amp up the horror also of it. So there's that. And Kaya Scodelary's performance, I didn't even really mention either. But she's great in those moments with Barry Pepper, but also her physicality in this is obviously like what makes her the star of the movie. So that didn't get enough praise either. So this is how I feel about Crawl now. So once again, I'm very late to the game, but I get where the acclaim is coming from. Finally, I should have had much more faith in. Yeah, just everything involved in this. So, because I'm more often than not a fan of the director, and I love Raimi obviously, and you can see some of his fingerprints on it. Barry Pepper obviously is an actor that I love, and yeah, so and the genre, of course. So, and combining, like, I kept saying in the videos, combining like horror, like monster movie and disaster movie. But it does feel like we're combining like monster movie and survival movie, and it does kind of get the disaster vibe like towards the end when we're out in the hurricane, which is nice. But yeah, so it's doing a lot also, and it's all working. So that's great with that. So we have a few more of these, and then like I said, we'll have one in October as well, and then one of these might be one video that touches on more than one movie. So, and the October one might be the same way. So we'll look into that. So we'll continue to power through this September, and hopefully you've liked what's come out, or hopefully you've seen what's come out, and there'll be a lot more, especially through October, which will be a lot of fun stuff. So until then, I think that's it.